Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City of Leawood Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for April 26, 2023. Could I have roll call, please?
Members Munson,
Present.
Dunn, Dr. Pepys, Clausen,
Here.
Hawk,
Here.
Farrington,
Here.
Bussing.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have quorum.
Thank you. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Any comments or is there a motion?
I move approval of the minutes as submitted. Second.
We have a motion for approval of the minutes from the last meeting and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion passes. The minutes are approved as written. We have our business tonight. We have two cases that have been continued and one has been withdrawn. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And on the first case, 2023, Laura Marshman, after several emails, phone calls, and I did send a letter to her dated 3/31/2023, asking her to contact us. I've had no contact with her since she did make application. So following the same steps as the one we had last year for the first time ever, I'd like the board to consider this application abandoned. But it'd have to go through a motion and a vote.
Yeah, because this has been continued for like several weeks or several months, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was the 01, so it was the very first case in January. And
Is there a motion by the board that we can,
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I would like to move on case 01-2023, Laura Marshment, owner, asking for an exception that this case has to be terminated in view of the fact that she has not properly contacted our staff on several occasions, as enunciated by our representative from the Leawood staff.
we have a motion for terminating the case 01-2023. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will consider this case abandoned.
who was that seconded?
Mel.
Thank you.
Mel did. New business, we have election of officers. Is that,
Yes, sir.
Who are existing officers?
Bill Clausen's the chairman, Mel Hawk is the vice chair.
Would they please identify themselves?
You want to ride home?
I'm Bill Clausen.
Okay,
I'm the chair.
I would be the second one then.
very well.
I guess nominations are open for,
Correct, yeah. For chair, vice chair, and unfortunately, the secretary doesn't get nominated. I have to do it.
I move Bill Clausen be nominated as head BZA chairman again.
and I would nominate Mel to be the vice chair. Are there any more nominations?
I move that the nomination cease.
All those-
Second.
All those in favor
I hate to say.
of those nominations, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Well, Mel, I guess
Same compensation package?
that's correct. Okay. The first case for this evening is case 20-2023. John and Carol Ngotti. This is a request for a fence height exception in accordance with the LDO section 16-4-9.4 in an R1 district for a property commonly known as 4001 West 124th Street. The staff have a report, please.
The property owners need to replace the existing wrought iron fence. They would like to replace the 4-foot 6-inch fence with a 5-foot tall metal fence. An exception for 1 foot is requested to construct the new fence.
Any questions for staff? Are the applicants here? You may come to the lectern and present your case. We ask that you give us your name and address, please.
Got it. Carolyn Gotti, 4001 West 124th Street, Leawood, Kansas. We have an existing 4.5-foot wrought iron fence throughout the backyard. It is rusting, peeling, and is in need of desperate repair. So it's actually going to be more beneficial for us to remove it and put a steel fence in. We originally wanted to just do another 4.5-foot fence. Come to find out that's not a standard size, so it's cheaper to do a 5-foot. We're happy to do a 4.5 or a 5, but we really don't want to go down to a 4. It dwarfs the property and the look of what's there. We've talked to all the existing neighbors, and nobody has a problem.
Sorry. Are there any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, on case 20-2023, 4001 West 124th Street, request for fence height exception in accordance with the LDO section 16-6-9.4 in R1 district. I move for approval.
Second.
I guess I should have asked, is anyone here that wishes to speak for or against this application? If not, we have a motion for approval in this case and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion passes. You'll be officially notified in writing to the city. Welcome. The next case for this evening is case 22-2023, James Engel Custom Homes owner. This is a request for a fence height exception in accordance with LDO section 16-4-9.4 in an R1 district for a property commonly known as 8901 Winonga Lane. The staff have a report, please.
The applicants would like to construct a new deck over the existing patio. Let's see. I'm sorry. The applicant would like to construct a 6-foot tall privacy fence in the rear yard. An exception is requested to help control road noise and shield the rear yard from 89th Street.
Are there questions for,
Wait a minute,
Staff?
we're talking about case 21-2023?
No, sir, 22.
22?
Okay, all right.
22.
Go ahead then. Okay.
Any questions for staff? Is the applicant here? Yes. You may come to the lectern and give us your name and address. Present your case.
Tarwater, president for James Engel Custom Homes, who is the owner of 8901 Winonga currently. And just a note, our customer, it is a sold home, is okay with a 5-foot tall privacy fence. In looking at the surrounding homes, of the 12 homes from Mission Road to Ensley Lane that side to 89th, just like this home does, 5 of the 12 currently have 5-foot taller privacy fences. So they have young children, they just want to have a safety issue in place to help shield them.
Are there questions for the applicant? You do have a plan view, Wade? Are there any questions, any comments?
Is this a new, I have a question. Is this a new fence or is this replacing
New
an existing,
fence.
new fence? It's for a tear down build. I know that we have one comment in here from a neighbor in regards to, they're in approval of a 6-foot wood fence so long as it does not extend further to the north of the home. So it looks like you're, from this plan here, you're stopping it at the back corner of each, to the back of the,
Correct. It doesn't go any further north than the home itself.
okay.
And actually, portions of the home project further than the proposed fence.
Other comments, questions? Thank you. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak for or against this application? Is there a motion by the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case 22-2023, 8901 Winonga Road, a request for a fence height exception in accordance with the LDO section 16-4-9.4 in an R1 district.
Second.
We have a motion for approval of case 22-2023 and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. You'll officially be notified in writing by the city. The next case this evening, let's see where we're at. Is case 23-2023, Amy Warren, owner, request for a fence height exception in accordance with LDO section 16-4-9.4 in an R1 district for a property commonly known as 4541 West 138th Terrace. The staff have a report, please.
The applicant would like to construct a 6-foot tall fence to screen a drainage ditch on the east side of the property. The fence would match an existing fence on the neighbor's property line, which is directly east of the drainage ditch.
Other questions for staff?
Is this a wood fence?
Yes, sir.
So, and the fence would go, I think we do have do we have a plan view of where the fence would go? Oh, yeah, we do, yes.
It would go where that red line is. There used to be a nice screen that consisted of evergreen trees, but they were in bad shape, so they were removed.
Are there questions for staff? Is the applicant here? You may give us your name and address and present your case.
Amy Warren, 4541 West 138th Terrace. We would like to put a fence up mainly to keep our children out of the drainage ditch, just as a liability, and it's not a very pretty sight looking at just a concrete wall, which you can also see from driving down our street. So that's why we were wanting to put up a six-foot fence. And then our neighbor just to the east of us has a 6-foot fence. And we've talked to other neighbors, nobody seems to have a issue with it, as far as I know.
You haven't heard from anybody, Wade?
No, sir.
Okay. Letters went out though, and,
Yes, sir.
okay. All right. Are there questions for the applicant?
Ma'am, what subdivision is this?
Leawood Meadows?
Leewood Meadows, okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Is anyone here that wishes to speak for or against this application? If not, is there a motion from the board?
Mr. Chairman, in case 2023, 4541 West 138th Terrace, request for a fence height exception in accordance with the LDO section 16-4-9.4 in R1 district. I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion for approval in case 23-2023 and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. You'll be officially notified in writing with the city. The last case for this evening is case 24-2023. Garrett Wilson, NSPJ Architects, Rob and Diane O'Brien, owners. This is a request for a variance to the maximum allowable grade change on a lot in accordance with LDO section 16-2-5.3G in an R1 district for a property commonly known as 8600 Belinda Road. The staff have a report, please.
The applicants are wanting to construct a new home on a lot that is in the floodplain. They are raising portions of the lot to formally move the floodplain away from the house and proposed infrastructure. The design calls for a plan to raise the grade as much as 6 feet, therefore a variance for 5 feet is requested.
Other questions for staff? So raising portions of the lot as to move the floodplain away from the house?
Correct. They're wanting to actually bring fill in, add grade to the rear yard to create a backyard and raise that portion out of the floodplain.
Okay.
Wade, is any part of this proposed house going to be on the fill, or is the fill just an additional piece?
That's probably going to be a question for the applicant. I don't believe so. If any portion would be on the raised part, it would be the deck.
Okay. After looking through all the material on this case, which is quite thorough, the only thing I can think about this case is that the only item that's going to cause any problem is whether or not the bottom elevation of the basement is above the floodplain. And if they are, they're okay.
So, yeah, adding fill to the floodplain, of course, creates some environmental concerns.
Yes, sir.
And these are being addressed.
FEMA's involved, state of Kansas will be involved. Our engineers are involved, and we do have John Westbrook here tonight. You might be able to ask him questions of.
Okay. Are there additional questions for staff? So I was, yeah, the memo, I'm looking here.
It's probably loose. It was placed at your station.
Single sheet, is this what you're looking for?
No, this one? Yeah. Let's see. Okay.
It appears that the concerns that anyone might have has been addressed by the city and the planners. I think I'm certainly willing to let them explain if there's anything more that needs to be addressed than we've already seen here.
Correct, yeah. And the applicant would.
So Mr. Westbrook, so you prepared this memorandum. I think it might be appropriate for you to present to go down these items for the board. Is that possible? Again, we need name and address.
Sure, yeah. John Westbrook, city staff for the city of Leawood. I live at 8608 West 90th Terrace in Overland Park, Kansas.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
I'm sorry?
What did you say? I didn't understand you.
I'm a city engineer, staff.
City
for the-
engineer Leewood?
Not the city engineer, an engineer for the city on staff for Public Works.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, as Wade alluded to, Garrett and I have worked extensively through each of these bullet points with his application, not only through our jurisdiction, but through FEMA and the state of Kansas. So, the first two are really just a synopsis of what they're intending to do. They're intending to build a piece of property, a new residential piece of property that's approximately 4,500 square feet in size, place fill along the property, removing the back lot. So the plan that we previously saw, that outline in yellow, is intended to remove portions of the property from the floodplain. It's not intended to move the entire piece of property, there you are, from the floodplain itself. And that structure outlined in yellow there is completely independent of the residential structure. And that's key to Garrett's point for what he's trying to accomplish here.
Okay.
He's provided drawings and surveys and floodplain modeling, all of the required deliverables for the FEMA floodplain permitting process for what he's attempting to do. Based on the modeling, okay, we've already covered that. The side yards of the property will continue to serve as the drainage path, so there's really just a minimal amount of grading that the project team is intending to do east and west of the property lines.
So there will be swales on both sides?
Yes, as there currently are now. An erosion control will be submitted to the city for approval prior to the permit. That's a standard thing. FEMA and KDA. So what's happened now, and I won't speak too far out of turn, but Garrett's got his approval for the Clomar F. And once that's been established and the project moves forward, upon its completion, he'll apply for his LOMAR, which will be the actual ratification that what was said would be done did in fact happen. So that's where we're at now. And that's part of our contingent acceptance of this project is FEMA and KDA's acceptance of those plans. Shall not allow no discharges outside the 10 and 15-foot rule, not to disturb more than an acre of land, which they can't do. And then any right-of-way work will be permitted through our department.
Have you reviewed the hydraulic modeling?
Extensively, yes.
You have?
Not personally, but internally, the city has reviewed it, and then we've also had our outside third-party consultant, Olson, review it as well.
And the FEMA permit has been submitted?
It has been submitted and returned, so they have their conditional approval.
Okay. So you're convinced everything has been appropriately taken care of?
I feel like from what we've seen from this applicant, it's not only is it thorough, it appears to be complete.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Westbrook?
So when it comes time to build, the Leewood Building Department that reviews these plans will be aware of what the restrictions are as far as the bottom elevation on the basement, the lowest basement floor is. Will they catch that? Is that what they do?
And so I'll let Garrett speak to that point, but the intent of building this portion of this project is to remove the residential structure from the floodplain itself.
We're not together on this.
Okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I might ask that staff put up the site plan that shows, that might be able to explain it a little bit better.
Okay.
It's a site plan with the cut, not that one, not the colored one, but this one here. in our packet.
Which one?
It's a site plan. It's black and white with, it shows the post-development swale and the pre-development swale, and then I believe the hatch portion is the cut portion. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Westbrook, but the hatch portion would be the cut, the removal of soil, correct? Yeah. That's the proposed structure. The solid is the previous structure.
It's
And-
currently there now, yeah.
Okay. So, and then it shows the adaptation of the swales on the side by the colored guidelines. So really, the only thing that's affected is that back portion, correct? Can you point on the, yeah, because we can't quite see. Thank you.
This portion here at the back,
Okay.
and it'll all be, there's, situation.
So where the hatch portion of the new home is, none of that is, none of the grading's changed there? Or just that dotted line?
I think so, because I believe that the foundation will be at that elevation. So, and I'll let Garrett kind of talk to this, but his intent is to use fill to really look at the difference between the outside face of that structure and the outside face of the residential structure. Because he still has to.
We don't have a plan view that shows areas that will be filled, is there? In other words, a plan view of the property and where foil,
Wait, give him the mic.
This color-coded portion here, and yes, this will all be placed before this structure is demoed. Oh, yes.
So the house structure itself, there's no fill in that because the foundation's at grade level and then everything, all the fill's around it. Okay.
Correct. The existing foundation will remain while this fill soil is placed, thus removing it from the floodplain. Then the house can be demoed.
other questions? Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the applicant here that wishes to, please give us your name and address, and
I
you
am.
may discuss your case.
Good evening. My name's Garrett Wilson, 6018 Maple Street, Mission, Kansas. I'm joined here tonight by the homeowners, Rob and Diane, through the Zoom link. And we're here tonight to make the appeal to the board that we'd like to place select fill in excess of 1 foot in order to raise a portion of the buildable area out of the floodplain. Essentially what we're doing and what John described, thank you, John, is in order to build a new house, we need to go outboard from that a little bit and build a short wall and place fill behind that wall. That removes the structure from the floodplain. FEMA actually has a designation for what's in the floodplain and what's next to the floodplain. By building that short wall around the house and placing some fill behind it, it puts the house in the area that's adjacent to the floodplain but not in it. And when that happens, the rules change. You're allowed to have a basement below the floodplain elevation. You're basically able to build it as a normal house. There are a few caveats. They don't want any mechanical equipment to be below the flood elevation that's around the house. They don't want any wells or foundations to be less than 2 feet above the floodplain elevation so that if it did surge, it wouldn't spill into the house. So there are some additional caveats. But essentially, when we place this short wall and we place the fill behind it, and it goes from up at the corners here. Up at the corners here, the fill that we're proposing is 0 inches tall, because that wall may stray. Then as it goes towards the back, it becomes taller and taller, and so the fill gets a little bit higher and higher because that fill is level all the way around. We are stepping it up for a terrace that's accessible from the house in the middle portion. I have a few more deliverables because I think it's important to understand the story. It won't take much time, but if I may go through a few sheets, Wade? Okay.
Wait, give him the mic.
I just wanted to point out the larger area here. You can see 8600 Belinda called out. This is along Dykes Creek Branch, and the blue area is largely the floodplain and the floodway. There's a portion within the floodplain that is the actual floodway where most of the water is moving in a flood event. And that's hatched in there, but it's hard to see. The red is the Zone X. That's the space I was speaking about earlier that's adjacent to the floodplain, but is not the floodplain, so it allows you to have the basements and things of that nature, but there's still some additional requirements in that red area. So quite a few homes affected by these floodplains, floodways, and fringe area, which is noted as Zone X. This is an enlargement of the parcel in question, 8600 Belinda, and it shows where the floodplain is currently. It also shows the green hatched area along here, which is the floodway, which nothing can be built in that area. FEMA has allowed us to place fill within this white dashed line to raise the area of the blue so that it then becomes the red. And they've approved that. Without doing so, you can see that we're very limited on the amount of buildable area we can have. And in fact, the existing house is a non-conforming use since part of the structure is in the floodplain and it has a basement.
So when you do your analysis, you have to calculate how much rise you would expect in any flood, correct?
Correct.
And
We have
how
to
much-
demonstrate that there's a no rise in the floodplain as part of this, part of these improvements.
Zero rise, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you've met that requirement?
Yes, it's most of the movement is happening in that narrow channel that's the floodway. So
Right.
the floodplain can be fairly slow, almost backwater type area. It's not always the case, but we were able to demonstrate that there was no rise as part of these improvements.
Lenders are concerned about home building in floodplain areas.
Yes.
Has there been any consideration or discussion with possible lenders, banks, savings and loans?
The homeowners have not indicated that they've had any trouble with it. I do think that there are quite a few homes in this community that are affected by this condition, and it would be nice if it wasn't a condition for those homeowners. I think lenders would be easier about it. There is floodplain insurance that all the homes that are in the floodplain have to purchase as part of the program here. So by removing from the floodplain, the homeowners wouldn't have to purchase that. Not that it's a huge sum of money, but it's a consideration.
And your proposal would eliminate some of the floodplain concerns about the building there?
Yes, the soil, the fill that we're going to place, that we're asking to exceed 1 foot, will actually act as a buffer to the home. And FEMA has documents about this very thing. We had to demonstrate it through modeling and other structural analysis. But yes, the fill is acting like a buffer. We're required to use a certain type of fill. It's a clay fill, and so it doesn't allow the floodplain waters to penetrate through that fill. So that's what it's doing.
So what type of wall will you be constructing?
It's a concrete wall, and it's designed to handle pressures both from the floodplain side, and we had to assume full saturation on the non-floodplain side. So it's a pretty robust retaining wall. That then,
Reinforced concrete?
Reinforced concrete, that's then faced with stone.
Okay.
Why will it extend above the final surface after your fill is in?
I'm sorry?
How high will the wall be?
So it's mostly pretty short. It starts at 0 at the corners. At the very highest corner, there is a very small portion that has, looks like it's 6'3". No, that's not right, because we're also placing some fill. And at no point is the wall over 5 foot. Okay, right.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes. So when the wall will not stick out more than 5 feet at its highest, right? At this very corner
Okay.
here, and then.
Well, it won't be visible from the street. It's gonna be on the back end, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Another question. After you get done with the fill, then where does FEMA put the floodplain lines? Are they still the same? It's just that you filled in now and you've been permitted to do that, and the floodplain's still the same, right?
More or less. So FEMA has 2 different ways for tracking changes in the floodplain geometry. We are using the mechanism where they issue the LOMA certificate, and that certificate basically says, okay, next time we do major revisions to the floodplain boundary, we'll go ahead and trace around the fill that we have placed.
And when all is done with your new house and your new fill and your new wall, are you still in the floodplain from a mapping standpoint?
No.
Okay,
we'll be
you're
out
no
of the
longer,
floodplain.
so you don't have, so the homeowner will not have to buy floodplain insurance?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask if we could put that map up that shows the colored portion of how you got to where you're at, the one that had the overall, yes, the bigger photograph. I have a question because when we're looking at this is, we have to vote on 5 factors. So something to look at is uniqueness of property, rights of adjacent property owners, hardship, public safety, general welfare, and spirit and intent. So as a board, we look at all of those items. And so uniqueness of property, this house sits currently in and out of the floodplain. And the proposed new location of the house with the adaptation of the grading takes it out of the floodplain and creates a new situation. So that's a little bit different when you look at this map here that's in front of us. We have to evaluate the uniqueness of this house itself or this property itself and why we're voting on it in regards to the city of Leawood in this ordinance. So can you speak to how this is unique to the other homes that are in or out of the floodplain? Because I mean, obviously the ones that are in the floodplain have to buy flood insurance. They have their own set of requirements. This one's in and out. And then you have a few that are in the orange-red area that are out. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of equate it to if there was extreme topography. It's usually going to affect a few sites, but all those sites are having hardship with that extreme topography. Here, there are nearly 40 homes that have the floodplain in a portion of their buildable area along Dykes Creek Branch here. And they do, like you mentioned, range from complete coverage to very little coverage into their buildable area. Depending on which lot you're in, it's gonna be a unique condition for what you are able to do. A lot of these homes are not gonna be able to place enough fill to get out of the floodplain. Some of them, it won't be a concern. Ours is unique in that it's enough to cause a problem. And so in order to resolve the problem, to place a reasonable home on that lot, then we have to fill a little bit to recapture enough of that buildable area. Does that help answer the question, or there's still some open-endedness there? Again, bringing it back to like extreme topography, you know, some homes will, okay, no, you can't build on the cliff. But others, okay, we can do a little bit. If you let us push this way or push that way, then we can put a reasonable home on that lot. And some, it's just, it's fine.
Are there other questions for the applicant? So we think that all the hurdles have pretty much been taken care of for this, right?
Yes, sir.
You need no other approvals?
No, sir.
So the floodplain then, when they recalculate this, will come up to the back of that wall?
Correct. It's actually mapped to the opposite side of the wall, but it's just a nuance that FEMA wanted to see.
This is another question for staff. So looking at the floodplain in the blue, has this been adapted through history from when this original home was built? Or, I mean, isn't that usually adapted, and maybe John knows best on that one, every so many years, the floodplain's reevaluated?
So the original floodplain mapping that Garrett's got here is from 2009, I believe, and then it was amended in 12. So to say that they periodically update it is what it is. They do update it, and it does take a long time. There's large organized projects to remap the floodplain is what this takes. And then when they go through the process again, as Garrett alluded to, they'll take all these LOMARs and remap that into their modeling data and reproduce those maps.
Because I'm looking at it from the viewpoint of these homes were built in history at a period where some were most, noted, built in the floodplain, knew they were building in the floodplain. Others were on the cusp of it, and others thought they were just outside of it. And that changes through history. So we're looking at, is this a unique situation? No, it's not, when there's some that are built in a floodplain and they knew they were in the floodplain. But in this situation, we're looking at a home where it's in and out of the floodplain and trying to determine whether it's unique.
Right. Well, and so this is speculation, but this may not have been the situation in 2008 before the maps were made in 9.
Many of these homes were built a long time ago, when that there may not have been a floodplain.
Or very
in their
reliable
property.
data.
This house was built in 1951.
Right.
You can bet that the urban area has changed a lot in 70 years.
And even over the years, the way that engineers analyze floodplains has changed between 2009 and current day, too. So you've got two different sides of this moving at the same time.
Right, and at the end of the day, there's a significant amount of floodplain that is in the buildable area of the home. If this parcel was somewhere else in this community, then they would be able to utilize that buildable area. Here, we're severely limited by the amount of area that's available to us without placing fill to recapture some of that buildable area.
Well, you're fortunate that you could make a case to to provide, to move the floodplain back on his property.
I agree.
There's gonna be cases where that couldn't be possible.
That's true.
Are there other questions for the applicant? If not, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Is anyone here that wishes to speak for or against this application? Please give us your name and address.
Jim Wynn at 8520 Belinda.
Okay.
And my home is directly to the south of where the proposed project's going to go. And I think, leaving this map up, a couple of things. Back in, we've been there since 1998. The creek project was completed, I believe, in 2002 is when they expanded the creek right there. They took about 40 by 120 of my backyard to get to where it was. This map right here shows that floodplain going in. Prior to the creek enhancement, I will call it, the water used to go up there. Since 2002, the water has never come over the bank. And where I'm going with this is that, you know, they built a 15-foot retaining wall on my backyard right there, and I'm still considered in the floodplain, but my gosh, in order for my house to get it, the house is directly to the west of me
So it
would
stays
be
in the
underwater.
floodway.
What's
It doesn't
that?
get out in the floodplain, right?
Excuse me?
It stays in the floodway.
It does.
Okay.
It has not crested its banks since the improvements to that creek. We're in favor of this project. But based off of what we heard today and what you stated, based off of what they have here, that house can't go any further. I mean, they're limited. They're landlocked on being able to build, you know, any more to it. And I just want to let you all know, from 2002, that water has never crested. And that's why when you asked the question whether or not this has been redefined as a floodplain or not, I asked the same question way back because of the fact that we haven't seen any of the water. I saw it come all the way into our alcove. I used to park my mower because I mow her yard as well. But, and the water would come all the way up there prior to the creek improvements.
And your house is which one?
I'm directly to the south on the left-hand side, 8520. So if you're facing 8600 to the left.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So anyway, that's all I wanted to add to the comments that have already been made.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this? Please give us your name and address.
Hey, good evening. My name is Justin McGinney. I live at 2701 West 86th Street. I'm directly to the, if you're facing the house, be to the right, directly to the west. I also face all of the same issues in terms of the floodplain, flood insurance, difficulty of developing the property. I'm in favor of this project. I think it's just a very difficult area to develop in. There's a lot of opportunity there. Before moving into my property, which I've owned about 5 years, looked into whether or not there was any flood insurance claims or anything, or where the water was going, or whether or not infringed upon the houses. I think there's, you know, they're big lots, half-acre lots, lots of opportunity to do some things, but the code is challenging. And I've worked with Public Works, and I've worked with planning, zoning, everybody, and Wade, and to kind of try to navigate that. And I know how challenging that can be. So, you know, in certain areas where it's not really a risk in terms of water infiltrating the house, and, you know, there's opportunities to develop. And obviously, I'm very concerned about changing the drainage pattern on my property, but it sounds like they've taken the right steps to do the modeling, work with FEMA, do the LOMA, and so just wanted to say that I'm in favor of the project.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this application? Well, if not, this is a variance. And so, as a variance, we have to, as a board, evaluate the 5 factors. And we have to vote on each factor to determine if we think that condition has been met. And we have to vote in the affirmative on all 5 factors to support a motion for approval. So as a board, we will start. The first factor we have to evaluate is the uniqueness of the property.
Well,
discussion. by the
staff
board.
points out that it's in the floodplain, has a lot of other properties there, but the circumstances seem to be unique in terms of trying to get a buildable house on that lot, and the rear or the setbacks and so forth cause them a problem. So I think that uniqueness factor's been met.
Other comments? All those who feel that the uniqueness criterion has been satisfied, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. We have voted in the affirmative on the first factor. The second is rights of adjacent property owners. Letters have been mailed, calls received. We've had residents from the area speak in favor of the case tonight.
In addition to what you've heard tonight, I did get a call about 4 o'clock from a neighbor across the street, an elderly lady who couldn't come to the meeting tonight, but apparently she does serve on the Architectural Review Board. This plan was submitted to them and it was denied. Strictly hearsay, but that's what she reported to us. So she wanted her voice to be heard, but I wanted to let you guys know.
Okay. Thank you.
Ask.
You may come.
Hi, Garrett Wilson again. We did go through the HOA process, and we have a letter of approval from them.
You have what?
We have gone through the HOA process, and we do have a letter of approval from that board of.
All right, thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Okay, rights of adjacent property owners. All those who feel that this criterion has been satisfied, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We have voted in the affirmative on the second factor. Third factor is hardship.
Mr. Chairman, I'll speak about hardship. This one might be a little bit difficult, but what I'd like to point out is that the effort that was made in redesigning and the grade was to improve the property and allow for them to be outside of the floodplain. It being in that unique location of being partially in and partially out, it was a little bit different than some in that area. They would have significantly been limited had they had to keep the grading in to where they were located in the original home. So I would say that they should be, I guess, commended for improving it versus not.
Other comments?
The applicant has made an extraordinary effort to make sure all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted. So in view of that, I certainly approve the proposal.
All those who feel that the hardship criterion has been satisfied, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We have voted in the affirmative on the third factor. Public safety and general welfare is the fourth factor.
I don't see how this affects it one way or the other.
Well, as long as they meet the no-rise requirement and drainage requirements, which I think you've met,
Yeah.
that should satisfy this criterion, I would think. Other comments? All those who feel that the fourth factor, public safety and general welfare criterion has been satisfied, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We have voted affirmative on the fourth factor. And last is spirit and intent.
Mr. Chairman, I'll speak on spirit and intent. So for us to uphold the Leawood ordinances and codes, we look at the spirit and intent of what generally is done in the city of Leawood and what is existing and what the future holds. So when we're looking at this property, we have to look at it solely in itself. There's an improvement with adding the wall, the grading. But when we vote on that, we also have to assess, are we setting a precedence for other properties around that are in the floodplain or in or out of the floodplain? Looking at that overall map kind of showed that you have a lot of properties that are in the floodplain, always have been in the floodplain. This here kind of straddled that line, and there's a few that are in that situation. So looking at that from a holistic view, I would say that you have met the spirit and intent. You're not drastically going away from the spirit and intent of Leawood, but doing it tastefully. I think a big part was the height of the wall going from a 0-inch gradient up to no more than 4 feet also exemplifies that you're not providing a structure that's completely out of line with the spirit and intent of what's around in that neighborhood. So it does meet it.
Other comments? All those who feel that the spirit and intent criterion has been satisfied, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We have voted on all 5 factors, and we've felt as a board that all 5 factors have been met. Therefore, we can support a motion for approval in this case. Is there a motion from the board?
I move to approve case 24-2023-8600 Belinda Road, a request for variance to the maximum allowable grade change in accordance with the LDO section 16-2-5.3 parent G parent in an R1 district.
Second.
We have a motion for approval in case 24-2023 and a second. Who made the second? Mel? Oh. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. You'll be officially notified in writing by the city. That is the end of our agenda for this evening. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved.
We stand adjourned.